"Get off the sidewalk, you stink." The shout came from a sharply dressed man stepping out of a shiny black Mercedes. His voice echoed through the busy city street, followed by laughter from two other men in tailored suits on the pavement. An older man with scraggly hair and ragged clothes looked up slowly. He clutched a worn backpack close to his chest. His beard was graying, his hands dirt-caked. He looked every bit the stereotype of a homeless person. Pedestrians passed without a second glance. Some crossed to the other side. Others looked away. The older man didn't move. "You deaf, old man," one of the laughing men jeered. "Move it before I call the cops." The homeless man gave them a long, piercing look, then calmly shifted his backpack and stood. "You might want to remember this moment," he said quietly. "The world turns faster than you think." They laughed harder. They wouldn't be laughing for long. The laughter didn't stop. James sat quietly on the sidewalk, leaning against a trash can outside the swanky new cafe downtown. His beard was overgrown, his clothes layered and tattered, and his shoes mismatched. One black sneaker, one worn-out loafer. Everything about him screamed homeless. That was the point. What the baristas and customers didn't know was that James Worthington owned the building. Not just the cafe, but the entire block. That a young woman behind the counter nudged her co-worker. "Look, he's still out there," she said, smirking. The guy she nudged, Jeremy, in his 20s, full of swagger and caffeine, sneered. Maybe if he had some self-respect, he wouldn't be begging in front of real businesses. A customer in a designer trench coat heard him and laughed. "God, doesn't he stink?" You'd think people like that would at least find an alley. James heard every word. He didn't flinch. Instead, he pulled out a crumpled cardboard sign from beside him. It read, "Anything helps. God bless." He held it up without saying a word. That a mother pulled her child closer as they passed. A delivery driver tossed him a half-eaten muffin. Someone else threw a coin at him. It bounced off his shoe and rolled under a bench. Inside the cafe, Jeremy shouted through the open door, "We don't need you blocking the view, old man. Go out somewhere else." Still, James said nothing. He just looked at him calm, studying. That evening, when the cafe closed, Jeremy joked, "He'll probably freeze out there. One less problem in the morning." James made a note of that. Mentally, quietly, tomorrow, everything would change. The next morning, the cafe staff found something strange. The homeless man was gone, but in his place was a clean envelope taped to the front door. It was thick, cream-colored, and sealed with wax. The logo on the seal looked expensive, very expensive. Jeremy snatched it off the door and flipped it over. "What is this?" "Some bougie complaint letter." The manager, Rachel, took it from him. "Don't be an idiot." She opened it and read aloud. "To the manager and staff of Brew and Bloom Cafe, you were observed yesterday treating an individual you believe to be homeless with disdain, cruelty, and a lack of basic human decency. I regret to inform you that your actions have consequences as of today. This property and all businesses on the block are under review by the Worthington Group. Its owner and my family trust. You'll be contacted shortly by our executive office. In the meantime, I suggest your team take a long, hard look at how you treat people who have nothing to offer you. J.W. Worthington Group?" Jeremy scoffed. "That's a prank, right?" Rachel looked pale. "No, that's James Worthington. He's one of the richest men in the country." "What?" "And we mocked him." She whispered it like a confession. Jeremy laughed nervously. There's no way that old hobo was James Worthington. But even as he said it, his voice wavered, because now he remembered those eyes behind a tangled beard and grime. They weren't lost. They were observing, calculating. The man he called trash had been taking mental notes on everything, and now he held their future in his hands. 3 days later, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up in front of Brew and Bloom Cafe. Out stepped a sharply dressed woman in her 30s, followed by 2 men in matching navy suits. She held a clipboard, wore Louboutin heels, and had a no-nonsense look on her face. "I'm Elise Monroe, executive inspector for the Worthington Group." Rachel rushed forward, nervous smile plastered on. "Miss Monroe, we got the letter. We thought it might be exaggerated." "It wasn't," Elise replied curtly. Mr. Worthington sent me personally. She stepped inside and took a slow, deliberate look around. He said this place lacked empathy and class. I'm here to see if it also lacks competence. Jeremy, behind the counter, let out a sarcastic huff. All this over one guy who didn't even buy anything. Elise turned to him, eyebrows raised. The one guy happens to own the deed to this entire block. And that man, while pretending to be homeless, watched every employee here. Especially you. Jeremy paled. Elise tapped her pen on the counter. He saw how you laughed when he asked for water. How you kicked his backpack with your foot. He saw you mock his smell right in front of paying customers. He didn't look like a billionaire. Jeremy protested. He looked like a problem. And now, you are the problem, Elise said coldly. You've been noted as a priority for termination pending further review. Rachel stepped in. Please, we had no idea. That's the point, Elise interrupted. Decency shouldn't be conditional. Elise snapped her fingers, and the two suited men began taking photos and measurements. They checked the food storage, inspected employee schedules, even reviewed the security camera footage. It wasn't a visit. It was a full-scale audit. By the time Elise left, Rachel looked like she'd aged 10 years. The story didn't stay quiet. The footage of the homeless man being insulted began circulating on social media. But this time, new information was added. The man was actually James Worthington, testing the moral character of people around him. People went wild. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all filled with reaction videos and commentary. Imagine mocking a homeless man only to find out he owns your job. This is like an undercover boss meets karma. Brew and Bloom's staff really fumbled the billionaire bag. Soon, the cafe had a 1-star rating on Yelp. News vans pulled up outside daily. Influencers recorded TikToks outside the front doors. And reporters tried to ambush Rachel every time she walked to her car. Do you have anything to say about your treatment of Mr. Worthington? Are you worried about being shut down? Rachel started leaving out the back door just to avoid them. Meanwhile, Jeremy had been placed on unpaid leave pending the final decision. And the rest of the staff? They were walking on eggshells because rumor had it, James Worthington wasn't done, that he had one more visit to make. It was a quiet Thursday morning at Brew and Bloom. The air was tense. Every time the front door chime had snapped up, the staff was jittery, unsure if today was the day. Then around 9:42 a.m., the door opened and in walked James Worthington, not in tattered clothes, but in a tailored charcoal gray suit, crisp white shirt, and Italian loafers. He carried a leather briefcase, his beard now neatly trimmed, his posture commanding. He wasn't pretending anymore. Rachel, halfway through pouring a cappuccino, froze. Jeremy, who had returned just for a final HR meeting, dropped the stack of menus in his hand. James scanned the cafe slowly, then walked to the center of the floor. I see you all cleaned up nicely, he said evenly. Rachel came forward, hands trembling. Mr. Worthington, I want to say how sorry we are. James tilted his head. Are you sorry for how you treated me? Or sorry because you got caught? Rachel couldn't answer. Neither could Jeremy, who stared at the floor. James pulled out a folded piece of paper from his briefcase. This is the updated ownership document. As of this morning, Brew and Bloom is officially under my control. I now own the building, the business, and the trademark. Gasps echoed around the room. Rachel blinked in shock. But you said you were just testing us. I was, James replied. But I've also decided to use this cafe as a model for something bigger, an initiative to promote human decency in business culture, which means things around here are about to change. He turned to the employees. Those of you who treated me with dignity when I had nothing, who offered help, or at least showed restraint, you'll have a future here. A better one. He locked eyes with Jeremy. But those who mocked, ridiculed, or acted like compassion was optional, you're out. Effective immediately. Jeremy opened his mouth to argue, but security was already escorting him out the back door. Rachel looked devastated. What about me? James paused, then said, You were a bystander, Rachel. You let the culture rot. But I believe in second chances for those who want them. You can stay under new supervision. Then he smiled, not with smugness, but something warmer. Starting today, this cafe is getting a soul transplant. He turned to the customers, now standing and applauding. Some even filmed. Others looked on in stunned admiration. James walked to the counter, took a seat, and said to the new barista, nervously waiting, "I'll take a black coffee." No judgment this time, right? Everyone laughed, and something shifted in the room. A reset, a reckoning, and a beginning. Within a week, the story exploded online. Headlines blared. Billionaire pretends to be homeless. Fires employees who mocked him. Undercover boss? More like undercover justice. James Worthington's Brew and Bloom story sparks national conversation. Talk shows picked it up. Podcasts dissected it. Influencers reposted clips from the cafe's CCTV footage and customer cell phones, especially the moment James revealed his identity. It was cinematic, too raw to be fake, too powerful to be forgotten. Worthington, though a private man, was invited to the morning circuit, where he explained his motivation. "I didn't do it to trick anyone," he told the anchor. "I did it to reveal who we are when no one's watching. How we treat those we think can do nothing for us. That's who we really are." The clip went viral, especially when he followed up with a powerful announcement. "I'm starting the Legacy Project, a nationwide initiative to undercover test companies for compassion, empathy, and dignity in customer service and workplace culture. Businesses that fail won't just be exposed. They'll lose partnerships, sponsorships, and credibility." The world took notice. Investors listened. Big brands scrambled to review their policies. And Brew and Bloom, the cafe that was once just a quiet spot on the corner of Maple and Fifth, became the flagship of something much bigger. Rachel stayed on, now as general manager. She was determined to earn that second chance. In an internal team meeting, she broke down. "I didn't stand up when I should have," she admitted. "I let the culture here grow toxic, but I won't let that happen again." She restructured hiring practices, held empathy training sessions, and created an anonymous customer review portal, not for complaints, but for positive stories. She invited community volunteers to speak to staff about economic struggles and resilience. Brew and Bloom slowly transformed into not just a cafe, but a community hub. Homeless patrons were served free meals every Thursday. A bulletin board near the door now displayed handwritten notes. "Thank you for seeing me. I got my first interview because of the clothes you donated. You reminded me I still matter." Rachel wrote to James, thanking him, not just for not firing her, but for changing her life. That he replied with a single sentence: "Change it for someone else now." The gala event was elegant. Gold-lit chandeliers, string quartets, and guests dressed in black tie splendor. It was the launch night of the Legacy Project, and the venue buzzed with journalists, CEOs, activists, and even a few celebrities who had flown in just to support James Worthington's movement. James stood at the center of it all, dressed in a classic tuxedo. As he finished his speech, full of calls to action, compassion, and accountability, he stepped down from a stage, greeted by applause. That's when he saw her, a woman in her late 50s, modestly dressed, standing off to the side near the silent auction table. Her face flickered with recognition. Her eyes brimmed with something deeper than awe, memories. "James," she said gently. He turned, eyebrows furrowing. "Yes, it's me, Miss Janine, from Jefferson Shelter." He froze. Jefferson Shelter, a place he hadn't thought about in years. A place he'd hoped no one remembered him from. "You were there when your parents died," she continued softly. "You were just 15. I ran the front desk back then." Suddenly, the gala vanished around him. The murmurs, the music, the glimmering glasses of champagne. He was a teenage boy again, angry, scared, abandoned by the world. And there she was, handing him warm socks and a peanut butter sandwich, telling him, "You're still worthy of love. You were the only person who treated me like I mattered," he whispered. Miss Janine smiled. And look what that became. They hugged, long, quiet healing. Later that night, James announced something unexpected to the audience. "I want to introduce you to someone," he said, guiding Miss Janine to the stage. "This woman saved my life with nothing more than kindness. So tonight, I'm announcing a $5 million grant in her name, the Janine Foundation, to support low-income shelters, crisis staff, and community care workers. Gasps. Applause. Tears. Miss Janine wiped her cheeks. I don't need any of this, she said into the mic. But if it means kids like James will be seen, not ignored, then I'm grateful. As the months passed, the Legacy Project expanded across cities. Cafes, stores, hospitals, even schools were reviewed, sometimes with hidden evaluations, sometimes with overt partnerships. Those that passed with grace were celebrated. Those that failed were challenged to change. And James? He returned often to the New Brew and Bloom flagship cafe. He always sat at the same table in the corner, where he once sat dressed as a homeless man. Every time he saw a customer treat a barista with kindness or watched a staff member gently help an elderly patron to a seat, he smiled. Because this wasn't about punishment, that IT was about redemption. About the small, human choices we make that shape the world we live in. And in that little corner table, James Worthington found the peace that even billions hadn't given him. He was no longer invisible, and he had made sure no one else had to be either.